All right. Welcome to the Free Money Podcast. This is the show where we explore what's keeping the world from investing in progress, answer the questions on the minds of people in the know, and give you the Brooklyn Bay Area consensus about institutional investing that you desperately crave. Serving up the gayer end of that, I'm Sloan Ortel.
And I'm Ashby Monk. And in addition to all that good stuff, we're going to try to make pensions and sovereign funds believable.
Believable. Yeah. I mean, it's like, honestly, like, what are these things? You know, they're these organizations that hang out in the middle of nowhere.
They've got all this capital. Are they real? By the end of this podcast, you will know they are real, or we failed.
Well, but you know, it is National Coming Out Day. And, right. You know, I guess it behooves me, dear audience, to come out to you as not just a transgender woman, but also a Windows user. Which I hope
people are turning off the podcast right now. They thought we were tech forward.
Yeah, it's just a temporary thing. Maybe it's just a phase. I just got tired of Linux. It's a whole, you know, but no, it is a big day for a lot of people to you know, and I mean, I think it coincides also with this wonderful Supreme Court moment where the kind of validity of a lot of, you know, queer and trans and gay folks in the workplace is sort of up for new debate.
Give us background on what do we know which cases they've selected to take on? I think we do. Do you have a sense for what are the decisions that are looming? So my understanding is that there are three cases. One that centers on a woman who was working at a funeral home, a trans woman, and she sort of came out to her employer and was like, hey, I am trans and I'm going to start changing my presentation. And her employer was like, cool. 2 weeks later, she's fired. Oh, interesting.
You know, and so the question is, like, you know, Title IX has been interpreted to, you know, sort of cover gender presentation.
That's right.
Because the idea is like, look, if you are, you know, going to, you know, police someone for presenting a certain way, you know, that's reinforcing a sex-based stereotype. You know, and that is not consistent with the protections granted under Title IX. Conservatives hate that argument.
Right. No, I mean, you know, it's an interesting question because one of the things I saw in reading about this was that over time, the percent of people who identify as LGBTQ is obviously going up as it's becoming more mainstream, but the number of millennials is getting near 10%. That identify as one of those things, whereas baby boomers are still kind of under 3%, under 2.5%. And so, you know, the idea that we would be, you know, biasing ourselves against nearly 10% of the population, given that there is a day the baby boomers will die and the Gen Xers will die and the millennials will be the, you know, the baseline. It seems insane.
From your lips to God's ears.
So.
Well,
10%. That's a big number.
It's you know, and I think inside of that 10%, right? Like, you know, the scare case is that, you know, the 10% of people identifying as queer in some way, shape, or form, which I use as an umbrella term for the whole kind of LGBTQIA you know, community, you know, is some sort of like brainwashing type victory for, you know, the LGBT ideology in the way that people talk about it. You know, where like, you know, so I think some people see that as like, okay, well, this is a sign of society sickness. You know, let's try and correct it out so that we don't get thoroughly and wholly debased.
It's interesting. It's funny you say that because there's a bunch of interesting articles today, and I was seeing one of these articles that just crossed my net searching that showed these religious ETFs that are popping up are you know, they are avoiding screening non-biblical activities, which includes abortion, gambling, alcohol. Can't believe they include alcohol in there. Pornography and the LGBT lifestyle. And I I wouldn't say
Yes.
these ETFs are killing it. I think the ones listed, one had, a whopping 17 million in AUM and the other was 14 or something like that. But they exist. And the good news is there are ETFs on the other side that are kind of LGBTQ friendly. And I don't know the AUMs of those, but I'd be curious.
Well, you're bringing up an interesting point, which is that it may be possible for me to short the heterosexual lifestyle.
Yeah, interesting.
Right?
Well, we could go short the biblical ETFs and long the LGBT. There's a hedge fund to be built here, I believe.
Well, yeah. I mean, like I'm thinking about okay, so when there was that straight pride rally, they were like, okay, let's come up with a straight pride flag, which a lot of people proposed as just khaki. Like a khaki thing,
yeah.
And it's like, I'll take the rainbow over khaki all day long.
Dockers, come on.
Yeah, Dockers and those square-toed shoes.
These cisgender dudes out there wearing their Dockers.
The worst. Some I'm sure are very good people, but
Oh my goodness.
But yeah, I think it's an interesting thing. I had this weird coincidence where I came out exactly 2 years before the word transgender was mentioned in the Supreme Court for the first time ever. And it's like, you think about that, it's like, well, wait a second, is this unusual or is this kind of normal? Because there's so many anniversaries that come with coming out. The first time you did X, the first time you did Y, when you told your mom, when you told your sister, when you told your friends, those are all different dates. And so I realized it's there's probably a 10%, 12% chance that the first time they say transgender in the Supreme Court, I'm going to have some kind of anniversary related to this process on it.
It's interesting you say, I have no clue that the word transgender is that new to the Supreme Court, but it makes sense to me. I mean, a lot of the times you really, or at least for me, I grew up in California, so I was kind of a bit more familiar with it. But I think for a lot of people, they go to college and that's the first time they really were kind of educated on this entire space. And back then, it was just LGB. I can remember in college there was no T on that group, and it was a big group, and it was LGB, and that was what it was, and all the other letters came later.
Well, and that represents actually a conscious schism on the part of some organizers, right? There's still this kind of LGB slate of activists who argue for kind of carving off the T. Because if you think about being a bisexual activist and campaigning for bisexual recognition and laws, that's a little less complex than arguing for transgender recognition in the law at the same time. And so I think that the call was made earlier on, I think by HRC and others to kind of focus on kind of the cis queer rights thing, and I think that got changed maybe 2008, 2010, but it was a big deal. So yeah, I mean the inclusion as we know it today is a pretty new thing, I think.
Interesting. Do one of the things I saw, tell me if this stat is correct, but there's over 1 million same-sex married couples now. Same-sex married couples.
I'm pretty sure that's right.
Yeah. I mean, that, there's just, it just seems like these Bible ETFs are going to be in big trouble if they, this is such a massive community that's growing and only getting bigger.
Well, I do really kind of love the idea that these social questions can play out in the market. I just kind of wonder what is the the natural biblical long.
That's interesting. Yeah.
right. Let's say I'm a bona fide biblical investor. I'm the Catholic Church's endowment or something like that, and I was to convert fully. What would I own? like usury is a sin, so I can't own fixed income.
Yeah, I mean, this takes us into some interesting areas, because I actually think the whole Islamic finance space is fascinating and quite cool.
Oh,
because
yeah.
it pushes people into like kind of an equity orientation, and it aligns interests, and it's about transparency, and yeah, it's a constraint. You can't go and invest in things that make money from interest, but it's a useful constraint. It's a constraint to align your interests as an investor with the person you're giving the capital to. And you do that through equity frames or, joint venturing type frames. But that's an interesting question. Maybe we'll do that. That'll be another episode when we dig into the Islamic finance question.
Yeah, the fire and brimstone portfolio.
Yeah.
Because I agree. Islamic finance is a really cool thing. It's like it kind of like is the cleanest and most prevalent to me, kind of instance of how finance can change anything into anything. Right. It can change equity into debt on a cash flow basis. Or vice versa. It's like. It's just the coolest thing.
It's true that there's the workarounds for that rule not to be Sharia compliant and not to charge interest are just as interesting as Islamic finance is. The structures are so fascinating to see how they get around that. But interestingly, that whole world of Islamic finance was partly how I got interested in prize-linked savings as a vehicle to catalyze personal savings, because in those Islamic countries, you can't pay interest on savings deposits.
Got it.
And so what do? How do you incent people to give you their money? Well, we give you prizes, but not everybody gets a prize. Only some of you get prizes. And so you're in there trying to win the prize. And that's the incentive that people have for putting money in a bank. When you can't pay somebody interest, you give them a chance to win a Mercedes. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I mean, and it creates something that's worth, the interest that you pay to an entire class of investors, right, and give it out to one person. Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, that's kind of what's so neat and so freaking queer about finance. Like, you could have 80, if you go to, 60 countries, they'll all call their retirement savings account a different thing, and they'll all accomplish, basic savings objectives in completely different ways. And it'll be like this kind of sui generis thing, despite like trying to, pursue this one very simple, very global need.
And in case on that just as like a follow through, we think about prize-linked savings today as being Sharia compliant way of encouraging savings, but the Islamic banks took the idea from going all the way back to prize bonds in the UK. And so that notion is actually 300 years old. And it was England trying to raise money to go invade France again. And so they created these prize bonds to get a low cost of capital on debt to go wage war. And so they would pay, I think they called it the $1 million adventure or something. And all these people would go in together with the hopes that they would win the million. Because they were combining all the interest into a single payment to the winning bonds. And so, these things get repurposed and reused. And I have to say, there's going to be fintech companies emerging, bringing it back to the National Coming Out Day. I expect, just like we're having fintech companies targeting millennials, I expect we're going to see savings products and fintech companies that are going to target this community of LGBT.
You'd think so. I thought there would be a space for like a queer to queer lender, right, at some point, or something like that, because there's not really.
Did you trademark that? Because that's pretty good.
Maybe I should.
Queer to queer lender. There you go.
Get my lawyer on the phone. But you'd think that there was I think Christopher Street Financial is like a queer targeted advisory firm, and there are some like queer specific financial planning concerns. But yeah, there's not so much like a credit card that you can use that, it would be materially different for, the queer community. I mean, I guess you could buy one, you could get one that like donates your points to HRC or something. But it's kind of weird to think about like what that might actually look like,
Yeah. Well, it's like cash back on debit cards going to community things that you support. It's ETFs that are the opposite of the biblical ETFs that we were talking about. And then it's, who knows what it is? I don't know what it is, but I came up with two.
Yeah, I mean, it's a hedge fund that launches activist campaigns to advance the gay agenda.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, I really like that idea. You take a big stake in like what's the worst company for LGBT rights? Who knows? But Chick-fil-A.
There you go. Yeah, it's shorting Chick-fil-A. Although those chicken sandwiches apparently have been a big hit. They're really good. I hate it. It makes me a bad queer to say this, but I mean, like, look, when I used to work at CFA, there was a Chick-fil-A around the corner. It was people always got a kick out of scheduling the CFA meetings at Chick-fil-A. And you know what? The sandwiches are great. Yeah.
They just are. Even if they hate me, whatever. I can return that with love. That's the way. Well, shorting the crap out of every single financial, thing that they're attached to.
What else? I don't know where to take that one.
But yeah, I mean, I guess, for all y'all who, have come out or thinking about coming out, I guess that the wisdom to leave is, a lot of folks it's so scary in the outset, like as you're starting to come out, right? Like you're just like, you're in this echo chamber. There's no possible way that you could know how things are going to be. Right. But like, I know a lot of people who like regret the specific way that they came out. Like that I could have done that more artfully or like, I mean, there's a lot of theater in it, which sucks. And so like, but I don't actually know anyone who regrets coming out.
That's interesting. It sounds like it's almost like a marriage proposal, right? It is that big moment in your life and you're making announcements. You can make an announcement one way or another way. And people really make a big deal about it. And they ask you, how did you do it?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you have like these, like I found all these like a note I wrote to myself right before I did it and all this like really cute shit. And it's like probably the scariest thing I ever did. But like if someone out there happens to be thinking about it, take the plunge. It's like, marrying yourself almost to go ahead and do it. Except there's no real risk involved that you'll turn yourself down.
Yeah. That's awesome advice. I think, it's interesting to hear this story, to hear you go through it and kind of how you dealt with it. I don't think anybody, in my world, we don't hear stories like that as often as we probably should to understand, the challenges and kind of hurdles to get yourself to that point. So congrats. 2 years later. 2 years later. Good for you.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, and, I was like still really lucky, and to be in like a situation where, like my person I was reporting to literally ran a, bringing women into investment management initiative at the time. So that's, direct results right there.
I think I can remember you sent a tweet out. Yeah. And I think I responded to your tweet, and that was the very beginning. Well, I mean, we were friends before that, but that was that was the beginning of this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was like so many good things came into my life as a result of doing that. And I mean, even just like, I had never before had someone come up to me and be like, "Your energy is amazing," and I actually get that a lot now. Which is like probably the best bull case for like living as yourself that I could possibly offer to anyone. Cause like when you're repressed, it comes across.
Well, don't we all like strive for authenticity and to be perceived as authentic? And so you are now, right? So
I guess.
Yeah.
I try. Yeah.
but like you're saying, like before that point, you probably weren't authentically, you weren't living the self that you are.
Yeah. There's a lot of multitasking that goes into being in the closet, and yeah, it's so worth not doing, but holy shit.
Here we go.
That's
just a great transition there.
I'm all about artful transitions. Lots of people, regret the way that they transition, but no one regrets doing it. It's time for Dear Ashby, which is the segment of the show where we take questions from listeners. This first question, I think, and Dr. Monk here will answer them. This first question is proof that we will actually ask the questions you send us. I think this person is kind of screwing us a little bit, but nevertheless, I think my hovercraft is full of eels. Yeah. I think my hovercraft is full of eels. Will alternative data help me solve this problem?
Absolutely, it will. Are you kidding me? Alternative. That's the top use case for alternative data. Look,
eel identification.
Well, okay. I'm gonna take this as if it's real, and say, look, alternative data. The best use for alternative data is risk management. And so, for those that don't know, alternative data, it's data that's not conventionally used in investment decision making if it's in finance, right? And so we use that alternative data for a number of different things. We can use it to try to find things to invest in. We can use it to try to generate alpha by doing, something that others aren't on different information. And all of those things are dangerous and kind of lead to an arms race. If we're all kind of after the same data, and we're going to use that data in order to make trades, and we're seeking short-term profit from those trades, that's like an arms race. But the best use of alternative data is using data to better understand the assets you own or the assets you're thinking of owning. In that case, you're not in an arms race. You're literally just trying to get a better understanding of things. And so why the hell not? If you've got eels, in your hovercraft, it's kind of a perfect use case. I mean, when I'm giving a presentation on alternative data, I often talk about an island in the Pacific, because there's this old parable about an island in the Pacific, and the tide goes out and goes way out, right? And so the people, even though they live on an island in the Pacific with a volcano behind them, they're like, look, this is weird. Tide's gone way out. Maybe we should move up the mountain. And so they're saved when the tidal wave comes in. And the notion of alternative data is that no two financial crises happen the same way. And so the idea that you're going to build a stress test or a scenario that gets you to a full understanding of the crises that are looming is ludicrous. You just won't get there. And so, you need the equivalent of understanding that the tide is going out and that something is weird and there's some action you should probably take. You don't necessarily know what it is ahead of time. And so, eels. We can spot eels with sensors and help you understand when those sensors go off that you probably shouldn't go in your hovercraft for a little while.
But can we ascertain where that reference came from with alternative data?
We might be able to. Yeah. Hovercraft full of eels. What is that one? You tell me.
I'm pretty sure that's a Monty Python reference. There's this sketch. Assuming that this isn't just a very off the wall person, which I wouldn't put past our audience, but there's this awesome episode where they're like, this person puts out a fake Hungarian to English, phrase book, and all these Hungarian people walk around London, saying, like, going up to like, my hovercraft is full of eels.
I get it. Yeah. It's so funny that you bring up first use of alternative data being Monty Python, because I was writing a paper yesterday. I do, as an academic, time to time do that. And we're talking, this paper is a little preview We're writing a paper all about how the use of alternative data can lead to pension funds being manipulated. And so we're trying to help pension funds use this type of data because we want them to better understand the assets they're going to hold for a long time and not end up with eels in their hovercraft. And yet we also, don't want them to get taken advantage of or manipulated by bad actors. And the more alternative data, which is unconventional data, you bring into your organization, the more vulnerable you become to that type of manipulation. And that's coming. You're going to see pension funds manipulated by bad actors. It's inevitable the more alternative data we bring in. And so rather than letting that happen and having a big catastrophe and then people not using alternative data or ESG data, we want to help them ahead of time. And I was like trying to think of a case to explain like what we're talking about. And all I could come up with was Trading Places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. When, if you remember the climax of that movie, the two old dudes are like trying to make some big trades on orange juice futures, and they end up, and they've got some alternative data coming in on the orange crop, and Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd swap the folio that had the data. And so those guys go down to the trading floor and they start trading with their alternative data, but they've got the wrong data. And Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd put those dudes out of business. And that is the kind of scenario that I'm worried about. The Eddie Murphy getting revenge. And we laughed because those two old dudes were the bad guys, but those old dudes could easily have been a pension fund.
Yeah. And if you get, I guess false, kind of confidence in your decision, based on bad data, that's really risky. You wind up with no hovercraft at all in that situation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just get eels, eels.
Which can't. Candidly, I really want a hovercraft now after we've been thinking about it. That sounds like so much fun, even if it is full of eels.
Me too. I think that's good. You're going to have a lot of choices, hovercraft choices. It's in there.
Yeah. Well, yeah. When New York City floods due to irreversible climate change, I will commute by hovercraft, perhaps. All right. Here's the next question. Is the singular they acceptable in professional writing? From a technical standpoint, is it grammatically correct?
I haven't seen it yet.
Really?
Not in professional writing. So my profession is I'm an academic, and so I'm immediately throwing my brain into like the world of academic papers and journals. And the interesting thing is, I find pronouns in academic writing to be fascinating because we often, I'm not a pure economist. I don't publish in pure economics journals, but I write a lot about economic geography and economic sociology and finance issues. And this dude, Homo economicus or economic man, is kind of often referred.
Such a homo.
Yeah. He's like cisgender, this dude.
It's gross.
So we portray these people as he. And when you see an academic use the pronoun she, it does stand out. And it happens a lot. And in fact, in my latest book with Dane Rook, we use that pronoun she quite a bit, just mixing it up, right? Like, we want people to
edgy,
and we just want to mix it up and give everybody a sense that this could be you. But yeah, when you see the she being used, I mean, I myself think, oh, this dude is, or this person who's writing, it's usually a dude in economics discipline. But there's, there is a sense that they are much more sensitive to the gender issues that are just prevalent in academia. And, I don't know if you've been watching the Nobel Prize stuff coming out all this week, but there's, there's all this research to show how much gendered bias still exists in the Nobel kind of selection, especially in the sciences. So I haven't seen they. I expect we will see they because many academics are fairly liberal and will want to give kind of a broader kind of pronoun to bring everybody into the tent.
Yeah, I mean, like I use they. So my professional writing is more like I don't even know what, I do these days, but it's more like emails to, white men in office buildings, I guess. But I use they almost exclusively just because it gets me past the, the he or she construction, which I find to be just so cumbersome and stupid. Because it's like, I get that you're trying to show inclusion with that construction, that people are trying to show inclusion with that construction, but in making it something that jumps out and is an either or, you know what I mean? Like that's part of what I love about it. And also I think that it's impossible to like be a queer trans person and not want to burn the entirety of gender down. So, they helps do that. So, my vote is use it all the time.
Yeah. Well, I find, it's interesting. English at least is a bit more friendly to the selection of your pronoun. I'm Canadian as a French speaker, and I can tell you that it's defined, what you use for what, and so there isn't the flexibility. So it's quite different.
I have no. That's a big deal. I have no idea how gender neutrality works in I speak Spanish, and you see a lot of people using like Latinx instead of Latino in there. But it's thank heaven for loosely gendered languages. Yet another reason English is the best.
Taking hold. Yeah. It's going to catch on this English.
All right. So last question. This is like really, this is like the existential edition of the Free Money Podcast.
I'm looking forward to this.
There is nothing identifiably wrong with my portfolio. Should I be worried?
Two reactions to that. First reaction. Heck yeah. You should be afraid, but not because anything's wrong with your portfolio, but because fear inspires hard work, and a little bit of fear.
Thought it was the mind killer.
Fear. Look, we humans exist because we had so much stress that pushed us to work our asses off to survive. So a little bit of fear probably gets you to do a little bit more homework on whether or not you're investing into things that you think you are, or paying fees in the way that you expect. So sure, be afraid. But then the second reaction I had is absolutely not, because people who are too afraid end up overreacting and doing dumb things. So, be afraid, but don't be so afraid that you then actually go buy or sell things that create transaction costs and, the short-term capital gains and all the things that end up kind of eroding value over the long time and prevent the magic of compounding. We don't give investment advice, but we do say buy stuff you love and that matches up with your beliefs, and just hold that stuff for just about ever. So long as it's not a Bible ETF.
That's sweet. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Because that's not, who could ever love that? A face, only, I would say even a mother could love. I guess, if one is too you're worried that a portfolio is boring, I guess, that might be, someone who wants to live in the action movie version of investing, where, the screen, one has 17 screens on the desk, and, I guess I say this as someone with 3 screens on my desk, so I should probably, chill out. It's okay.
Don't do anything. Yeah. Don't do anything. If you have a portfolio and it's invested in stuff, just trust that when you made those decisions, you weren't crazy, and let it ride. Just let it ride. unless you were buying like Uber, Lyft, and you went, you took a bunch of leverage and now they're down 50%. Other than that,
there's a listener out there who hasn't slept for 17 days and is like, oh, okay, this is fine. This is good. Okay, good. But I think that about does it for us today.
Yeah, that's great.
Ash? I think we'll chat to you guys all soon. Thank you so much for tuning in. This wasn't investment advice, but we love you just the same. Bye.